Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Cherries Red Army YouTube channel. If you are a regular to this channel, we appreciate your support and thank you for joining us. If you've not subscribed yet and you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and like for more content. This channel in the main is an AFC Bournemouth channel, but what we're looking to do is bring some neutral content to you. And in this show, we'll be reviewing once a month the Championship in its form. And to help me on this show, I have a guest, and welcome John Spark. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me, Turk, and bringing something new to the channel.
And how are you doing over the weekend of the football that you've seen?
Well, obviously, in terms of our channel, it's been a wonderful weekend to get a win back on the board with Bournemouth, but also just interesting to look back over the results over the month and this week, just to see some teams really shining at the moment and others that are definitely struggling.
So what we'll do to start with the show is we'll have a look at the league before the actual February month came to us, and we'll have a look at the table. I mean, can you remember sort of as we look back what the table looked like? And I'll bring it up on the screen now, and we'll bring it closer. So in the top six, there was Norwich, Swansea, Brentford, Reading, Watford and Bournemouth. The bottom three was Nottingham Forest, Rotherham and Wycombe. So it was a month ago. But yeah, what's your thoughts on that table before February came?
Well, I suppose they're sort of at the top of the table where we could start is that Norwich, I think, for the previous couple of months, I've been thinking Norwich is going to run away with the league, and it's really who's going to come second. And we'll see over this month. That opinion hasn't really changed. Looking back and thinking about how close Blackburn were to the playoff places at that point, it's been quite a worrying slump for them in terms of where they are now. And then Cardiff, if you look there in 15th. That's quite a lowly position compared to where they ended up at the end of the month and the kind of form that they just took off on under Mick McCarthy.
And what we're going to do then is we're going to have a look at the game weeks as they go throughout the month. Now, the actual game weeks, there was a bit of COVID issues for certain teams, so they had to recover a few games at the end of January and February, I believe. But we will bring up the game weeks and we'll go through them. And what we'll try and look at is what teams stand out and what teams have sort of struggled as we go along. So we'll bring up the Championship table as it's here, and we'll start with game week 26. And I will just sort of breeze through these to start with. So as you can see, there was a Millwall draw against Norwich. Bournemouth lost 2-1 Sheffield Wednesday. That would be Jason Tyndall's last game in charge. Coventry City lost to Nottingham Forest 2-1. Wycombe Wanderers 0-0 with Birmingham, and a cancellation there for Luton. In round 27, there would be Watford 1, QPR 2. So we'll bring it up to round 28, and that's where we'll focus on. So as you look at round 28 there, John, and hopefully you can see it on the screen, is what game to you stands out in that game week?
Well, I suppose an interesting one is the top of the table clash there between Swansea and Norwich, where it's an interesting one because I'm not sure too many could have predicted exactly how that game would go, but a 2-0 win sort of showed Swansea's ability to really, how good they have been at getting clean sheets and making sure the opposition don't concede. And Norwich are no mugs going forward, but they did end up going through a little bit of a sticky patch, and they seemingly recovered quite strongly over the last few games. But I think with it being such an important game at the top, that one sticks out to me a lot.
Bristol City lost 2-0 to Cardiff, and I think Cardiff had a couple of draws before then under Mick McCarthy now, and I think that was probably Mick McCarthy's first win. We're going to see as the show goes on that they've gone on some form, but a 2-0 win for Cardiff, Mick McCarthy, would that surprise you?
Well, it doesn't anymore, but certainly at the time, you wouldn't have imagined what they would then go on to do. It's just a credit to the man and the manager that he comes in and he's still undefeated now, but he goes in, gets a draw or two, and then they could just go on an incredible winning run. And Bristol City I believe they weren't too far away from firing their manager as well at that point. and with the positions they were in, it certainly seemed like a surprise at the time.
In the team of the week, we have a Bournemouth player in Steve Cook. There's also a player in Andre Ayew who's got lots of experience, and he's doing very well for Swansea this year.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the few real goal threats they do have. That, as much as they have been doing well defensively, they have struggled to score at times, but he's a very experienced and accomplished professional.
So if we go into game week 29, round 29, should we say, looking at some of the fixtures there, we got a Blackburn and Preston, another away win for Preston. They beat Bournemouth away from home. They seem to be good on the road.
Yes, I mean there was a period earlier in the season that their home form was one of, if not the worst in the league, I believe, but their away form was really, has been what they've been able to build their successes on this year, and certainly that when they beat us, it was, it wasn't a huge shock, but the way they beat us was very impressive.
Also an away win for Millwall in that week where they beat Reading. An up and down season, an up and down month for Reading, shall we say, but a rare away win for Millwall, but they beat Bournemouth as well away. So
true, and I think it was more surprising was that there was a Reading that weren't able to do better in that game, and especially Millwall have. I mean, I believe I remember hearing a lot of discontent amongst the fans over sort of the last couple of months regarding the Millwall manager, and it was a very impressive win to be able to take those 3 points away from Reading.
In round 29 game week, there's 3 Watford players in there, so that would have been obviously good for them. Qpr Moore as well would start to put in some performances for Cardiff.
Yeah, Qpr Moore now is showing up as the highest rated player of the championship over on Who Scored, and Josh Murphy there as well. Those two started forming a partnership, although Shea Ojo also was playing up front with Qpr Moore. But then as well, you've got to notice Hellick and Collins for Barnsley in that team, because I think the the fixture that stands out to me there is Barnsley's win away at Brentford. A bit further down on the list, they, Brentford have been flying for most of the season, and they really looked like they were going to really start pushing for automatic promotion, and then suddenly hit a massive roadblock. And Barnsley have been very impressive themselves over this month.
Round 30 then would come mid-February, and we would look at the scores from that week, and a Borough team that would have a red card in that game, but would still beat an inconsistent Huddersfield team 2-1. I mean, what's your thoughts on Borough sort of always staying in touch with the playoff places, but not doing enough as of yet to try and push inside?
Yeah, just every time I think Borough are going to get into the playoff places, they just hit a roadblock somewhere, and they don't quite pull all 3 points out, or something prevents them from getting into the playoff places. But even then, getting a red card and still beating Huddersfield in that game week, I don't know what to make of Huddersfield, to be honest. They can turn up and smash a team now and again out of nowhere, but they'll also barely show up for a few weeks. So it must be very frustrating to be a Huddersfield Town fan at the moment.
And if you're in the chat and you are from one of these teams and you're not a Bournemouth fan, and let us know in more detail how you're getting on in these game weeks, because we'd like to know. And if you're a Bournemouth fan, let us know what you think about the Bournemouth scores. If there's any chat going on, we'll bring them on the screen. Another team that has struggled in February under a manager that's come under criticism is Birmingham. I mean, a 2-0 win for Millwall there, but Aitor Quiranka, is he lucky to still be in a job, would you say?
Given Birmingham's propensity for getting rid of managers when they aren't, pulling their weight, I'm a little bit surprised he's not gone yet. They did go on a very long, poor run and weren't scoring that many goals. Yeah, not getting really the results that. Well, they might have been getting the results that they deserve, to be honest. There was a lot of discontent I remember seeing online about from the fan base about how they were performing, but things may have picked up a little bit over the last couple of weeks from what I've heard. But I don't know, they're still in very big trouble.
And looking at the team of the week for round 30, you've got a player that I've always liked in a full-back position, and that's Connor Roberts for Swansea and a Wales international, and Andre Wisdom behind him for Derby County. I mean, any comment on those types of players in that team week?
Yeah, well, I mean, Derby have been needing, their experienced players to really show up and start getting the defensive performances they need to start picking up the points to get themselves out of the drop zone, which they obviously have at this point. And Connor Roberts is part of a very well organised Swansea side, and fun to see the next cherry on the other wing and Scott Malone there getting recognition.
So let's go on to round week 31 then, and a Brentford loss away to Coventry would probably be one of the surprises of this game week.
Yeah, and that makes it 3 losses in a row for Brentford there from what we've looked at against Barnsley, then QPR, and now in this week against Coventry. And Coventry are a really good side on their day, and impressed with how they've taken themselves to the Championship and really attack teams, regardless of who it is. And Brentford were on a bit of a slide at this point. There certainly was quite a worry that for them that they were going to completely fall out of the automatic chase and have to settle for a playoff place at this point. But they have picked themselves back up again since then.
And maybe another surprise in that game week was an away win for Middlesbrough at Reading. The wheels seem to be coming off at Reading potentially.
Yeah, I was just listening to something just before coming on here, and someone mentioning on the Championship podcast that they don't think Reading are going to stay in the playoff places. They've had a very up and down season with considering how they started. Then they went on a very long losing and drawing streak and picked themselves back up again, and now they're on the downward slope. It is going to be interesting to see if they can get their form back to actually maintain that playoff spot.
We'll have a look at these two teams in more detail in a bit as well, but another win for Cardiff and another win for Barnsley. They would go on some hell of a form, them two teams.
Indeed, and as we'll see, that certainly those two are the teams to watch this month.
And looking at the teams that are in there, you've got got quite a few Stoke City players in the team of the week in round 31. Stephen Fletcher, Joe Allen, Nick Powell, and Barry Bannon shows his face again. A player that I think is a very good footballer, maybe underrated on some days, but goes about his business under the radar.
Yeah, when I was speaking to a Sheffield Wednesday fan channel earlier in the season, when he was asking what player from Sheffield United you'd like to have, and I said, well, if I couldn't have Pete Jordan Rhodes, I'd be going for Barry Bannon, because I think his ability on the ball and just he can completely run a game at times, and it's I think a quite underrated player on his day.
So as we go into around 32, we're looking at the fixtures now, and a Luton Town team that have picked up some big wins this season, but again struggled as well. A sort of Luton Town 1-1 against Millwall. That to me does look like a draw, and it did end a draw.
Yeah, I mean it's teams that we as Bournemouth fans have seen our players struggle against during the season. Very combative, and both play the 3 at the back season system on the regular, and clearly cancelled each other out in this game. And it's not the biggest surprise that would happen, but they're just about picking up enough points, both teams, to be pretty safe this season, I would say.
And Derby County have done better since Wayne Rooney's taken over. Now, we could have been in a similar position, having an unexperienced manager who's played at the top elite level. We do have an unexperienced manager that's played for the likes of Real Madrid in defence, etc. But Wayne Rooney, what he does give you is he's been managed by probably the best manager ever to have lived. And I'm sure he's probably got his contact number still in his phone if he needs advice.
I would imagine so. And it won't just be Sir Alex, and imagine that he'll be picking the brains off if necessary, because he'll have worked with. I believe he was still there when Jose was at Man United. It just because you're a great player doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be a great manager. But I certainly didn't imagine Wayne Rooney going into coaching and management. But he seems to have taken it like a duck to water, and Derby's form really has improved since he replace the previous charge.
And we'll come to the current game week in just a moment, but João Pedro's in there, a guy that we kept quiet on Saturday, and you've also got a Brentford winger in there as well that's given quite a few assists this season.
Yes, I mean Brentford are are the top scorers in the division, so but it is based on having the kind of free flowing attacking play that is envious to a lot of teams. And certainly got us there, put in the performance that game week to deserve to be in that spot. But Mbeumo on the other side is another player that's can be very impressive on his day. And I mean, I can't remember which game it was I saw towards the start of the month where he got kind of cancelled out. But if you let him play, and if you let most of those Brentford players play, you're going to be on the end of a hiding.
And also in that game week, you got a player in Morrison at the back, a player we didn't deal with at home when we lost to Cardiff. Very good player for Cardiff, and he can get a goal or two.
Yeah, I mean, he scored in the current game week to make sure they got the draw, and scored in that one as well. I'm not sure about his celebration, to be honest, but fair play to him. And certainly Cardiff were really completely flying at this point. The other one from that game week that really stands out is Wickham getting a win against Reading. I really wanted to see Wickham do well, show what they're capable of, and stay up this season. But it just looks like they're falling too far behind, even after that really impressive win to manage to beat a promotion contender in Reading. They're really to do something to stay up this season.
That's a really good point. And with Nnamdi Offabor there now, as they've got a player that can help them, but they are giving it a right go. Probably too late. We'll probably find out. But you're absolutely right. That's a good win for Wickham at home to Reading. So as we go into the final game week, which was last weekend, just gone, a win for Bournemouth, a vicious game between two rival teams. Got over the line. We needed it, didn't we, John?
Absolutely. I mean, that was after the previous two games where we'd lost, and having fallen out of the playoff places for the first time all season. We desperately needed to get a result of some kind to really sort of boost the confidence of the team and the fan base's confidence in the players after the previous couple of performances. But that was a battle, and it was even despite some interesting refereeing and a free kick going one way then the other. It's nice to see that we were able to pull 3 points out of the bag there.
And a Bristol City team now managed under Nigel Pearson, and we'll touch on them later in the show. He was officially in charge for this one, a 3-1 away win at Swansea. That means that they look like they're being set up right, and Pearson's got straight in there and starting to get them going.
Yeah, I mean, he's a manager that was talked about quite a lot amongst Bournemouth fans as someone that they wanted in before Jonathan Woodgate was confirmed, because he's been there and done it. He's very experienced, very competent, sets up his team well, and beating beating Swansea City is nothing to sneeze at. A 3-1 victory is as much as as much as their position now, they certainly look like with the squad they've got, they could push on with a strong manager.
I think we touched on this team of the week, actually. Steve Cook's in there. I mean, I don't know how Ben Pearson doesn't get in that midfield, and how Arnie Danjuma, the magician, doesn't get in the team of the week. But that was the current one with Buendia, a player that was targeted by Arsenal, apparently. He's definitely a talent and probably helped Norwich get into top of the league at the moment.
Yeah, I really don't think there is a better player in this division than Emi Buendia. As much as I don't like to say it, given how many good players we've got in our Bournemouth squad, he's just something special at times, and the fact that he's still in the Championship is just ridiculous. When we've got players like David Brooks that have come down and just not really performed, when you've got a man like that really did the job for Norwich in the Premier League, and then is still doing the job for them in the Championship, I don't know why a big side hasn't gone for him, to be honest.
Thank you to everyone who's joining us for the moment. Looking forward to seeing the chats that are going on. And a certain Sam Davis has gone for a beach run today. I think he's on a mission to get fit in March, with hopefully football being reopened at the end of the month. But thanks for joining us, Sam. Enjoy that sun, enjoying that weather. I'm going to bring up the form guide then and the form table for February to see what we've just looked at and how that looks from a club point of view. And as I bring that up, a team that does look in a bit of a struggling time is Blackburn Rovers. I mean, what's your thoughts on some of their results in February?
Well, I mean, you can just see from the table that they just haven't been getting the results at all. And when you think about towards the start of the season, how they, certainly goals scored wise, they set off like a house on fire. The fact that has completely dropped away, and they can't pick up a result to save their lives at the moment, from a team that looked like they were, at least playoff contenders to be, stuck in sort of the lower end of mid-table. It's a shame that they've dropped away like that, because with players like Adam Armstrong, if you supply him with chances, he'll put them in the back of the net. So to see them drop off like this is a big surprise, really.
So this is the current form guide, and in the bottom six there, you've also got Bristol City, who have won the last two. They need to turn their season around, put themselves back in the hunt, and Reading are down there as well. So these playoff places from probably 4, to 8th, etc., are going to get a little bit tasty potentially.
Yeah, any game between those teams is really going to be the some of the highlights of each game week going forward. I mean, I think sort of Reading down to Barnsley, Cardiff in the actual table. Any of those that come up against each other are going to be very tasty. And Bristol City now, as much as they have dropped off because of those several losses in a row, they've now got a foundation to build upon, and they could well look to force themselves back into that chase. And I'm not looking forward to when we go and play them this midweek, because that could be a very difficult game.
And as we said, a much improved Derby under Wayne Rooney, picking up 10 points and putting himself 10th in the form table. AFC Bournemouth, not as bad as I actually thought it might have been, but we're currently 9th. But as you go up to the top of the table, Cardiff City, 19 points in February, and Barnsley and Brentford with 15. That's some impressive stuff from two teams that are going to give it a right go to try and nick one of those playoff places. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, Barnsley suddenly right on a coattails, and I was aware of Barnsley being a well liked team with the way they play the game, and with the managerial choices that they've made with bringing Valérien Ismaël in once their previous manager had gone off to coach in MLS. But to suddenly be where they are, it's very surprising, really. And Cardiff as well, as soon as they bring in a new manager, they fly up the table again. So those two have done incredibly well. The team I think that was gone under the radar there is Nottingham Forest. I knew they picked up a couple wins, but I really hadn't been keeping an eye on how well they did this month. So for them to be 4th in the February table, you didn't imagine that they were ever going to be going down this season. They were in a very false position from being quite so low in the table. But now I think it's too late for them to make a charge for the playoff places. But they'll certainly be safe in mid-table, and with Chris Hughton, they'll be a team that'll be challenging next season. I'm pretty confident of that.
Let's have a look at the Championship table then, the official table as it stands. And we have Norwich top, Brentford second. The rest of the 6 is made up of Watford, Swansea, Reading and Bournemouth. And as we've just discussed, Barnsley and Cardiff are on the tails. Is it nice to see Bournemouth back in those places, though, as we hit March?
It's certainly nice to see us back there, even if, Barnsley do have a game in hand. They could go above us when they do play that match. I'm not sure when that'll be, because we've got pretty consistent two games a week for a little while, I believe. But it's we as fans know that we could definitely be higher than that. But given how periods of the season have gone, just to still be in the hunt for the playoff places is quite a positive to look at, and after a very good performance. But there's a lot of challenges there with Barnsley, Cardiff, Middlesbrough, Stoke, Bristol, City probably could all look and say they still have aspirations for getting into the playoff places. And I'm sure Millwall and Preston fans will probably still be looking up as well. But it's going to be quite a fight to get into those playoff places this season, I think.
And then we look at the bottom of the table for teams that are trying to stay in the league. Sheffield Wednesday, I believe, have just appointed Darren Moore as their new manager today. Obviously, they had a points deduction at the start of the season. But is it a concern for teams like Coventry and Huddersfield that just seem to be inconsistent on a continual basis?
Yeah, I mean, I said earlier about Huddersfield just seem to be so inconsistent at times. They'll go and smash Swansea 3-1 and then get battered the next week. So you never really know what you're going to get with Huddersfield. Whereas Coventry, they are still a newly promoted side. Their target for this season is 21st. Their realistic target for the season is 21 and upwards. So they probably were hoping Birmingham would continue their downward trend. They obviously picked up a win. They've picked up 2 wins in the last 5. Rotherham looked like they were going to do okay, but you can see that form it's completely tailed off. So that's a worry there. Sheffield Wednesday, they've got a new manager in. I personally not sure why Darren Moore is taking that job. Because he was with Doncaster, who are in the playoff places, I believe in the playoff places in League One. He could well end up trading places with his previous team. And then I mentioned Wycombe. I was desperate for them to stay up this season because I really like Wycombe, but I just can't see them doing it. Unfortunately, they're too far away at the bottom of the table.
Let's have a look at the stats then. Who's performing from a player point of view this month and this season? We'll look at the season stats as a whole. At the top there, you'll see a player cost less than 10 million. I may have mentioned him before. Ivan Toney, 25 goals, and we're just entering March. Timur Pukki has also taken himself to nearly 20. And the last time I think Norwich got promoted, he broke that 20 goal plus mark as well. And Adam Armstrong, 19 goals, but Blackburn underperforming.
Yeah, Ivan Toney is just continuing to show why he's probably probably the signing in the Championship this season. He's slotted right in into that position that Watkins was previously in, and even after losing, some very good players, Brentford, they just managed to keep finding the right signing to just slot back into the vacant position. And 25 goals already this season is a hell of a tally. Adam Armstrong, I think I mentioned him before with Blackburn. It's just like, if you give him chances, he'll put them away, you would expect. But they've dropped like a stone. So it's clear. The team themselves need to pick themselves back up. And Armstrong, I don't think has got many goals in the last month. Timu Pukki, it's just weird how he just keeps performing. I'm not entirely sure. When you look at him as a player, you're not entirely sure exactly what you're going to get out of him if you just looked at him. But then he'll just turn up in the right spot. He's got more pace than you think he does. His positioning is great and just knows exactly where the back of the net is. And like you said, he did it last time he was in the Championship. He tailed off a bit in the Premier League last year, but still right up there. And then Lucas João, I think in terms of efficiency, I think he's the highest, or at least he was before, in sort of towards the end of last year. Another very impressive forward, and there are at least one player in there with Bournemouth in Dom Solanke that makes the top 10.
Well, I was going to say, we're going to talk a little bit more about Bournemouth and have a look at our results in a little bit more detail in a bit. But we've had Dom Solanke in the top 10 from a goals point of view, but we haven't really had him for most of February, so that's a bit of concern, but we'll come back to that in a moment. When we look at the assists, a player you've already touched on, Buendia, is the top assist maker, but another player that also is a talent, if he can get his mind on it, and that's Harvey Elliott.
Yeah, Harvey Elliott was the name I was going to mention earlier with Blackburn, but his name escaped me. But but his combination and that front three of Blackburn were very impressive earlier on in the season, and he's gone through a bit of a journey, Harvey, in terms of going from Fulham, getting taken by Liverpool as a 17-year-old, I believe it was, and then after having a few appearances here and there for Liverpool, has gone and starting to show what you can do at Blackburn, and it's I've always got something against a player that's being rated so highly when they're only 16 or 17, because there's a hell of a lot more that can still go on with a player, and when you overhype them, there is always the worry that it goes to their head, but. He's clearly showing what he can do in the Championship, and I don't think it'll be too long before he starts at least getting some more regular minutes for Liverpool as well.
And just to finish off, he is smiling his face there in a little circle window, and that's Harry Wilson, 9 assists. I think this is his league. I said that before, but I think he's made for this league.
Yeah, and when he was with us in the Premier League in our relegation season, like. He would just be completely absent from games for 70 minutes, but then we might win a free kick in the right spot and he'll just put it in the top corner. He didn't really impose himself in games enough for me when he was really challenged in the Premiership, but Premier League. But in this league, when he's got a team that work well with him, and he is very much the creative influence in that Cardiff side, and being played in that number 10 role now instead of out wide on the right when he was with us is clearly a better position for him, and that assists tells you just how good he is, not only with the dead ball, but just with his general open play as well.
Thanks for everyone who's joining us. We've got about another half an hour to go on this, and we're going to have a look at Bournemouth in more detail. If you're a subscriber to this channel, thank you for your support. Really appreciate it. Hit the like button on this video, a new video to this channel that we're looking to do once a month. If you're new to this channel, hit the subscribe button and join us and get involved. We're going to take a look a little bit more about Bournemouth now, just in a second. You're watching the Championship Review Show. Please make sure you subscribe and like for more content. Let's look at Bournemouth then in more detail and looking at some of those scores. The concern for me when I look at this, John, is just losing at home and not making that a fortress. We got the result on Saturday, but we need to start making those dominant performances work at home if we've got a chance this season.
Yeah, it's been up and down. I mean, we at the start of the season we were the team that went the longest without a defeat, and then obviously went through quite a long period where we couldn't really pick up a win. I mean, just look at the home games this month. Is lost to Sheffield Wednesday, which now they've done the double over us. It's not a good look when a team in 23rd has taken 6 points off you. The win against Birmingham was a tighter affair than it should have been, and I don't think that flatters us at all in how we performed. And then beating Rotherham again, that was a difficult game, and Cardiff City, as much as we made quite a few good chances, we just couldn't put them away. And when you're conceding 2 goals at home most games, you are going to suffer. It doesn't look good when you see that 2 for Sheffield Wednesday, the 2 for Cardiff, the 2 for Birmingham. As much as we need to score more goals, we need to stop them from coming in as well. Yeah,
and just briefly, we'll just touch on Jonathan Woodgate in his performances since Birmingham. A back 4 that worked for him in the FA Cup, obviously, as well. A couple of clean sheets, got the win against Rotherham, probably lucky not to concede. But then he switched up to a back 3 against QPR. Did the same thing against Cardiff. I'm glad he changed it back to what worked so well for him. But was you a bit surprised when he went to a back 3, considering what the problems JT had?
Yeah, it was something that we all sort of weren't looking for him to do, considering he'd got at least some level of success by playing a 4-2-3-1 in the previous few games. I think we've all come to. I think I've come to the conclusion that really he was against QPR and Cardiff, 2 teams that were in very good form. He set up to try and stop them rather than play to our strengths. Playing 3 at the back, matching them up, matching up the wing backs. I can see, like, tactically the idea that he was going for, but I think having lost both those games, he's come to the conclusion, like, that's just not going to work for us. We need to play to our strengths rather than try and combat the opposition's strengths, and especially against a team like Cardiff, who are always going to do better than us in the air in set pieces. We should have gone into that game saying we're going to outscore you, because we weren't going to be able to stop them from scoring for long. And we certainly didn't in that game.
Yeah, definitely. Let's look at our season stats then. Let's have a look at some of the problems we've been having in February. 8 goals scored, 8 goals conceded. I think we'll focus on one area, and maybe we'll have a look at the March review show and focus on another area. Now, something that sticks out for me, John, is we haven't scored enough goals. And we had Dom Solanke there in the top goal scoring charts on 10, but he hasn't played for quite a few weeks. And a few areas that concern me. The 16% conversion of chances. We also got only 4 headed goals. Okay. And then one other point that really sticks out to me is the accuracy of crosses at 3.7 or 23.4%. And when I converted that or matched it up to some of the other teams that are vying for those places, we're probably the worst performers in that area. Then we look at our situation we've had from Rico. Are we not scoring enough goals from things like headers? Are we just relying on wonder strikes from Danjuma all the time?
Well, the thing is that our play under Tyndall was very much, we don't cross the ball. The amount of good positions that we got into and just didn't cross it. I mean, 3.7 crosses per game, accurate crosses per game is pretty terrible, really. And the fact that that's at about 1 in 4 means we're only putting in about 12 crosses a game. It's not a lot, and that's gone up since Woodgate's taken charge. It's much more like, if we get into a good position, throw it in the box, which I'm quite happy with as a strategy. That you don't need to overplay when you get into a decent position. The reason 4-4-2 and getting balls into the big man up top worked for so long is because it's effective. We've very much got a style going back through Eddie Howe and previous, where we try and keep the ball on the floor. We play good football, but when you're in a good spot, you make chances, and certainly players like Adam Smith and Rico haven't been providing quite really at all those kind of accurate crosses over the season. But that's started to change up a bit. Certainly in the last few games, we've definitely been getting it into the box more, and I can think of not only Long scoring his first goal for second goal. First goal for us was a header. Yeah. There was also his second goal for us, which I'm not sure counts as a header because he bundled it over the line. But that came from a cross into the box, where Sam Surridge won the header and nodded it back across to him. So it's definitely a tactic that Woodgate is saying, look, we need to be making more, so let's get it in the box.
And when you look at that headed goals for, we haven't had a goal out of Steve Cook this season. I mean, that's a shock for me. And we do need players like Steve Cook just to help us score some goals every now and again.
Yeah, well, Steve Cook certainly doesn't just have to put it in with his head either, because, I mean, he's not bad with his feet in the box, and he's thrown an overhead kick or two into there as well. So, but yeah, I think just goals from defenders in general haven't got many at all this season. Chris Mepham nicked one for us against Reading. No, not Reading, Watford. But just not many goals from balls into the box from set places. We've scored a few direct free kicks, but our general crossing from corners in particular has been pretty shocking for the majority of this season, in our inability to beat the first man. But hopefully that's something that will improve on going forward, because you need to do all you can to get the goals in this division.
Final statistic to look at before we move on and have a look at the fixtures that are coming up in March. 57.8% ball possession we've had this season overall. We dominate a lot of football matches, have not done a lot with the ball in those football matches. Funnily enough, on Saturday, we would have 30% or so possession against Watford and win the football match. We need to just make sure we're playing to our strengths, surely.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're a team that really has historically done pretty well from counterattacks, and it's it's been very frustrating, just our complete lack of impetus when we've got the ball at the back. The players don't decide to just sprint forward and provide chances for us going forward when our opposition are in their worst state defensively. It was the case in the Premier League last year that we didn't win a game almost all season when we had more possession than our opposition. We actually can do very well set up when we know how to play against a team that want to dominate the ball, like we did against Watford. But when it's up to us to actually make something happen, that was why JT got the sack. He just couldn't seem to get us actually to break down a low block side, and we'll see going forward whether Woodgate has got the capability to make sure we do that. We managed to get the win against Rotherham, but we'll have plenty more games this season where we'll have a team that will just set up to try and stop us from scoring.
Let's have a look at who Bournemouth have got then in March. So on Wednesday, we've got Bristol City versus Bournemouth, and we'll have a match preview at 7:30 p.m. live on YouTube and Twitter on Tuesday, tomorrow night. We've then got Preston away on Saturday on the 6th of March, Bournemouth at home to Barnsley on the 13th of March, and Swansea on Tuesday, the 16th as well. And we'll just scroll down there. That'll be our final league game as the FA Cup follows that. Not an easy month, that, John.
No, well, they pretty much never are. But particularly with it coming up against Bristol, like I said, I'm not too looking forward to facing a new manager bounce against Bristol. Our game earlier in the season was a pretty tight affair that was settled with one real moment of quality to get that 1-0 win. Preston have already beaten us this season, and that was quite an open game. But their home form isn't what their away form is, so you hope to take advantage of whatever weaknesses they've got when they play at home. But they did win their most recent home game, so you just never know what you're going to get sometimes. And then Barnsley, after coming up against Cardiff and QPR when they were in top gear, Barnsley look like they're really approaching that as well, and that's going to be another very difficult game. The away win we got against them earlier in the season where we absolutely smashed them, I don't see that happening again this time around.
And we'll take a look at the rest of the fixtures in the Championship on Tuesday, which is game week 34. Cardiff City versus Derby, Coventry City versus Middlesbrough. Huddersfield will take on Birmingham at home, bit of a tasty affair down the bottom. Millwall against Preston. Nottingham Forest versus Luton. Reading and Blackburn. Blackburn, a team, as we said, trying to find some form. And another tasty affair there, I think, coming up is Norwich versus Brentford. I'll just bring that back because I just lost it. I've got a refresh screen there. So we'll bring it back to Norwich versus Brentford, QPR versus Barnsley, Watford versus Wickham, Bristol City versus Bournemouth, as we know. Sheffield Wednesday will take on Rotherham. Whether Darren Moore will be in charge for that, who knows? And Stoke City versus Swansea. What's your thoughts on some of those games? There's some tasty games there down the bottom and the top.
Yeah, I mean, good luck predicting most of those because, Cardiff Derby, with the way Derby are able to pull results out sometimes, even if Cardiff are on great form, that should be quite an exciting tie. Coventry Middlesbrough is an interesting one. You'd imagine Middlesbrough will make that work, but you never know. Huddersfield Birmingham down the bottom is a really important tie, but then you go further down the list and you've got Norwich City Brentford, which will be the standout fixture, I think, of the week. But the one that I'm probably more intrigued by is QPR Barnsley, with those two in such good form. Both of them, QPR, will be looking even further and further up and make sure they get themselves well and truly away from the drop. And Barnsley looking like they might just nick a playoff spot. Two teams that are in very good form, so that will be very exciting to look at.
And when you look at that match between QPR and Barnsley, you've got QPR who have been revived by a Charlie Austin return. And then you've got a Woodrow, a player that's always had the potential from what I've heard. And he's starting to put some goals away for Barnsley, and I'm sure he's contributed towards their form improving.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting the QPR upturn with Charlie Austin coming back. I mean, obviously he was successful for them last time round. He's not he's not quite the player that he used to be. That's why he's been allowed to go back there on loan from a Premier League side. But Barnsley just, their just general all-round play is something that you need to be very wary of how good they've become. Kuli Woodrow is a name that I remember hearing a good few years ago as a youngster coming through the ranks, and he's been with Barnsley for a couple of years now, I believe, and is starting to really put in, get the goals that being an attacker he needs to get to show what he's capable of.
Going to have a little bit of a play around then to at the end of this show as it's coming up. We're going to have a little bit of a play around with the current game week 34 and 35, Tuesday, Wednesday and Saturday. Now, what we've done, me and John, and you may disagree with some of these or you may agree, we've gone for either a home win, an away win or a draw. And we've just used a 1-0 or a 1-1, not really focusing on the goals. But we've tried to predict what the results might be in game week 34. And we've also done the same for game week 35. So let us know if you think that we're talking sense or not. But what we're trying to achieve with this, John, is trying to have a look at what the table might be come the end of play at 5 o'clock on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, this game week 35, I think, is easier to try and predict than game week 34. I mean, there's so many of those matches that could go either way. Cardiff Derby was one I mentioned before, and then you got, Norwich, Brentford, QPR, Barnsley, Bristol City, Bournemouth, Sheffield Wednesday, Rotherham. Like, all of those could go either way. So that one's this. I think game week 34 is very interesting in terms of what might come out of that. Game week 35, I think, might be a little bit more clear cut in quite a few of these games. Cardiff, Huddersfield. Watford and Nottingham Forest should be interesting, but you'd still expect Watford to win. Barnsley taking on Birmingham, Brentford taking on Rotherham, Reading taking on Sheffield Wednesday. There's a lot of higher or top end versus bottom end ties this time around. So a little bit easier to go with the predictions, I think.
And if I get all these right, it'd be the first time I've ever got an accumulator right. But potentially, come the end of play at the weekend, the top of the table would look like this, with Norwich City still top. Brentford would nick into second. Watford would be third. Swansea fourth. Bournemouth would then take fifth, with Reading sixth. Barnsley would still have a game in hand, and Cardiff City. But again, one game or two, and it swings in a different direction.
Yeah, that would actually make things quite interesting in terms of that gap between Watford, Swansea, Bournemouth, and possibly Brentford. Because I certainly don't see Bournemouth really getting past fifth at the moment. But it depends how Swansea do with their games in hand. As you can see, that if that prediction is right, they'd be 4 points behind Watford with 2 games in hand. So it makes things look a lot closer when you've got a steady progression of points between the top 6 teams than what it might actually be. Barnsley and Cardiff would still be fighting for playoff places, and Middlesbrough, if we're right, would have dropped down even further. But I think it really is sort of down to probably Middlesbrough that we're looking as maybe playoff place contenders. But depends how Bristol City do with any manager, of course.
And as we look at the bottom of the table, if we were right in our predictions, Wycombe would still be rock bottom. Rotherham would be in there as well. Birmingham City and Sheffield Wednesday would actually be out of the relegation if we were right in our predictions.
Yeah, I think they'd be pretty pleased with the way you predicted that. It's. I mean, they'll obviously be still feeling the fact that they've got that 6 point deduction. They do still have a game in hand, so there's something that they can look for in that regard. But they do need to be scoring more goals. I mean, you can look at that. Admittedly, we've only gone for 1-1, 1-0 for our predictions, but they're only in the low 20s in goals scored. And you look Wycombe, they're down there with 23. Then they're not doing much better. So, they really need to be picking up more goals to get themselves out of this predicament.
All right, so let's sort of wrap off this show with a little bit of fun. And in the chat, thank you for joining us. Whoever has joined us today, really appreciate it. It's a sunny day out there, so it's good that you're with us. Now, let us know what you think. I'm going to drop some questions on here for John now and just get his reaction to it. So, who has been your team of the month? I mean, give us a few names, throw a few names out there, and then tell us who you've been impressed with the most this month.
Well, you've got the likes of Brentford obviously doing what they do best when they really get going. But the two sides that have done better than them have been Cardiff and Barnsley. But then QPR as well have picked up a bunch of wins out of nowhere. I think it'd be out of those four in terms of the team that's performed the best. But I think just in terms of the number of points they've got and how many wins in a row they've got, it'd definitely be Cardiff for me. And the fact that they're now looking like they've got a very good shout for getting back into the playoff places again this season, when they just didn't look like they were going to be anywhere near. It's been a really impressive turnaround for them.
Top of the form guide, Cardiff, hard to disagree with. A Mick McCarthy team that just gets them set and structured, win a lot of games without the ball, but they're happy to do that, and they use that height that they have. So team of the month for February will go with Cardiff. Team struggling then, the team strugglers of the month. Who's really been struggling, and who's the team you're going to choose?
Well, I mean, a team that's still struggling down there is Wycombe, of course. They can't quite pick up the points they need. You've got Rotherham, who are on 5 losses in a row. And, Sheffield Wednesday, again, just can't seem to get themselves actually out of that those relegation spots. But I think it's maybe a bit easy to look at the form guide and say that it's be Blackburn Rovers. But, I mean, when they've only got 1 point from the whole month, I mean, that is bad. They are in a very, very poor run at the moment. And, I mean, I haven't heard any chat of Tony Mowbray losing his job. I mean, he's been with Blackburn Rovers for ages, and considering how well they started in terms of how many goals they were getting and the attack that they have at their disposal, I don't see him losing his job. I mean, they're not in any pressure of getting relegated, but he's really got to turn this around pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I think I got to go for Blackburn. It'd be so easy just to choose the team that's down the bottom, but and they've got Harvey Elliott, who has performed this month, and Adam Armstrong on those goals. But I think we're going to have to go with the form guide, and it will be Blackburn, the team strugglers of the month for February. The final one is, who's been your surprise team of the month?
It's there's because all the teams that are doing well apart from Brentford are all ones you didn't expect to. You've got Cardiff picking it up, you've got Barnsley picking it up, you've got QPR doing well. I mean, I think I mentioned it before. I'd probably go with Nottingham Forest as my real surprise team of the month in terms of. I mean, like I was saying before, that they were in a false position so far down the table, but they weren't scoring goals, they weren't keeping clean sheets. That like Chris Hughton had come in and had been around for a few months, and results hadn't picked up, and suddenly they're 4th in the form table for February. It's not like they don't have a good squad, and obviously they've got 1 or 2 names we're familiar with in Harry Arter and Lyle Taylor, but with Lewis Graben wasn't scoring the goals that he was last season, and with the issues they've had in the change of manager, so many players they had on their books that I don't know how they haven't gone bankrupt at this point, to be honest. The amount of money they've spent, I'd probably look at Nottingham Forest personally as a team that just has completely outperformed what I thought they would this month.
So just to correct it, Mark said that Birmingham were the strugglers of the month, not the surprise team of the month, although they've won 2 in the last 3. We've got Reading. I assume that there'd be a surprise. And QPR was one that I was going to pick out because I think they have been decent and they picked up some really good results, beating Brentford and Bournemouth. I'm going to give my one, though, to Barnsley. I just did not ever expect Barnsley to go on the run that they've gone on, and who knows what they can achieve with a good manager at the helm that it looks like, a young manager, I believe. They've got a chance, so I am going to go for Barnsley. So brilliant. John, a mini sort of preview then. How you feeling about Bristol City on Wednesday? What are you expecting from the game?
Well, I'm expecting us to go with a 4-2-3-1 again. I certainly don't see Woodgate changing up the system at all. I don't see Lewis Cook playing in the same spot that he did in the last game as the number 10, as a sort of pressing, aggressive ball winner high up the pitch. I'd imagine we'll go back to, well, I would have said Wilshere, but that won't be happening. Probably Billing back in that spot again, I would imagine. And with the fact that we kept a clean sheet, and with Pearson's record of him, we haven't conceded when he started for us, we could see pretty much the exact same team. I expect the same back four, and Solanke being back, we'll see whether he starts the second game in a row, considering he's not fully fit. But most of that team will be the same, I would imagine. And unlike against Watford, where we allowed them to control the game for the most part, that won't be the case, I don't think, against Bristol City. And we're going to have to, do better to try and break down a very organised defence.
Make sure you join us for our match preview show live tomorrow night at 7:30 on YouTube and Twitter. If you're not following Cherries Red Army YouTube channel on Twitter, make sure you do, because that's where you'll hear what's going on. We'd also appreciate if you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. On the trail to 300, let's get there together. Anything is possible. John, it's been great to do this. It's the first time we've done it. We're going to look to do it again in March and April and May, hopefully with promotion. But have you enjoyed yourself?
Yeah, it's been really interesting to look back at some of these results that happened, and some of the stories that have transpired over this month.
Thank you to everyone who's joined us on their lunch break on the beach. We really appreciate it. Any comments you have on the show, if you're not able to catch it live, just drop it in the comments box, and I'll read every single one, and I'll also reply if I get a chance, but I'm sure I will. Until the next video, until tomorrow at 7:30, we'll see you soon. Up the Cherries.